Michelle.
Okay, it is now 6:30. I would like to call this City of Kyle Planning and Zoning Commission workshop meeting to order. Can I have a roll call, please?
Schadmeyer. Carol.
Here.
McCall. Christie.
Here.
Gara.
Here.
Voss.
Here.
James.
You're muted, Brendan.
I'm so sorry. Here.
Okay. Item number 3 is citizens' comments. Deb, do we have anyone, or Howard, do we have anyone who's called in who wants to speak? I'll open up citizens' comments right now. Is there anyone?
I didn't
No.
receive any via email to my knowledge.
Deb, anything? No?
No, ma'am.
Okay, since we have no one to speak, I will close citizens' comments. Item number 4 is general discussion. Continued discussion regarding the Downtown Revitalization Project. Mr. Coons.
So I'd like to start out real generally, and then we can try and ferret out any specific issues that we want to talk about. But so the direction from council was the review of the CBD1 and CBD2 zoning districts, specifically the uses that are permissible in those two districts, and how that relates to the ability to transform and revitalize what is perceived to be as an underperforming downtown. So you've all done research in this. Some of you got it to me earlier and we put it in the packet, but everybody that's on this call has done their homework. And I'm going to start it off real generally by asking you just a two-part question, really. What did you find? And do you believe that the revisions to the allowable uses will contribute to revitalization?
Okay, before we continue, I would just like to welcome Congressmember Rizzo to our meeting. I just saw him on my screen.
A battlefield
So
promotion.
welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here with y'all.
Okie dokes. Okay, who wants to go first to Howard's question? Mr. Vice Chair? Councilmember Guerra?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So really,
Alex, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and put your submittal up on it so you can sort of use it as a talking point.
yes. Oh, so Howard, do you want me to just go into what my points are now, or just answer your question generally first to give everybody a chance?
Answer my question generally first. Yep.
Okay. Absolutely. So what I noticed in going through it, CBD1 and CBD2, I very much saw that there was the more walkable, the more window shopping type uses were CBD2. And CBD1 had more specific uses such as Taylor, tax return preparation. And so I do think that going through these lines by line, we're going to we're going to be able to remove some that are not applicable, shouldn't necessarily be in our downtown. But I think if the only thing we do is just remove certain uses, it's not going to help to the downtown revitalization. It'll help make the code more streamlined and take out things that are unnecessary. But to really assist with downtown revitalization, I very much believe we either need to, one, consider adding more uses to CBD1 and or CBD2, and also just things that are allowed in that area and or how we structure CBD1 and CBD2.
That's a really good point. So did any of the commissioners go at this with an expectation that the product should be removal of uses? Or did you go at it with the preconceived expectation that it should be adding uses? Or neither?
So
I looked at removing uses.
Removing them?
I did too, Rebecca.
And I'm also there too.
But
I started there as well.
Yes.
I'm going to say that, I mean, even looking at it with just removing uses, I'm with Alex in the sense of this isn't all there is. This, I feel like we're I don't know. flailing kind of as a commission. Just doing this CBD1 and CBD2 is fine. We can look at it and add and subtract and come to consensus, but that's not the key. I don't feel that's the key to making downtown any more desirable or more likable, like what Priscilla had said at the last meeting, and I agree with her. When you come into the city of Kyle, you come across those railroad tracks. It's not a pretty sight. And we can change all of the uses in the zoning that we want, but if we can't get businesses in here and people on the street, then that's all for naught. You know, I don't know. It's just my own humble opinion. I feel like we could be spinning our wheels here.
Howard, there were some items that, there were some lines that I did want to remove, but my goal in this was to add more than I was removing. Because to really go at the heart of what we were trying to do to help with the downtown revitalization, I very much think we have to add more than we subtract if we want to make a positive impact on encouraging business in our downtown area.
I can agree with that, Alex. That's a good point.
So who else? Who took part in this, and what did you find, and what did you feel the relationship is between uses and revitalization?
And
I also looked at it as removing of some of the uses, but one of the things I did that I did not write in my email to you, Howard, was I actually spoke to people that I know that are trying to open small businesses that have looked in downtown Kyle to open their small business, and I asked them why they're not willing to open in downtown. And one of the biggest complaints that I got was the cost of rent for downtown. So I don't know if there's a way the city can work with those landowners of those buildings to reduce the price that could help us get those businesses in there. But along with what Michelle was saying, I agree that we do need to make downtown more pleasurable when you're entering it, so people want to also be there.
Okay. So the visual presentation of what you see when you're downtown.
Mm-hmm.
That's a little bit, that's tangential. I mean, clearly it's related, but tangential
Right.
to the use question, because Paul's not here and I don't want to speak for him, but the last time we had this meeting, Paul had mentioned sometimes that he would walk from his home in hometown Kyle to the downtown, whether it be City Hall or one of the restaurants. And so he had mentioned the whole issue of sidewalks.
Mm-hmm.
Sidewalks are important for a couple of different reasons. The three that come to the top of my head, the obvious one is off-highway transportation, right? Multimodal transportation where you don't have to be in a car. But there's two other things. There's the outdoor display of merchandise. It's pretty typical for clothing stores, especially, I can think of, that they would have a rack of clothes that would go out in front of the window in the front of their store, so that as somebody walks by, they could get it. It puts the product in front of the potential purchaser. And then if you've got enough of a sidewalk, then it's a place where you can put tables and folks can eat. We talked about that a little bit, roughly a year ago or so, when indoor restaurants were shutting down because of the pandemic. And some of the restaurateurs wanted to know if they could use the parking spaces that were adjacent to their restaurants and bars, if they could put tables outside so that they could get the appropriate social distance and not have people be inside. Little bit of a complicated issue, but the whole idea of uses that are indoors versus uses that are outdoors. I don't want to get too specific before I give everybody a chance to comment on the opening question, the general question. But the fundamental expectation of this project is revitalization of downtown. So a couple things need to be established. What is perceived as the deficit, and then what would correct that deficit? And I think when we talk about revitalization, we're just talking about the activity, the amount of production, for lack of a better term, not necessarily just the dollars and cents, but just the amount of the number of people that cycle through, and is the expectation that more people equals a revitalized district. If you drove down Center Street on a Wednesday afternoon at 5:45 or 10 after 6, coming home from work, and you saw 400 people from the time you crossed over the tracks till the time you made the right onto 150, would you consider that to be a busy and active, a vital downtown, as opposed to what we probably see today? So once we can kind of narrow the question, we have a better criteria to which we can compare and contrast our existing uses. So the visual presentation, like Rebecca states, is a big deal. Real estate prices, is it for rent or for people that are trying to purchase property fee simple? Do you know if the shopkeepers were interested in renting existing spaces or buying and constructing new?
The ones I spoke to were trying to rent existing spaces.
Yeah. I've I speak with economic development, just really hallway chatter, nothing official, but there's always a recurring comment that some of the properties in Kyle they're advertising. I won't say they're fetching, but they're advertising Austin prices, but they're 30 miles south of Austin. So I've heard that same complaint. I don't know necessarily what the public sector can do about the private sector valuation, but I can empathize, because quite simply, if those people aren't able to succeed at what they want to do, then we're not able to succeed in facilitating it for them. So good points. Commissioner Harrell, what did you find generally?
Well, I did mine a little different, and I don't know. I kind of did little highlights on mine. What would stay, what would be good for staying, as for walking downtown, that would interest people. And then I kind of highlighted where I think it needs to go. And, the CBD 1 or CBD 2 just needs to go all together. And then I highlighted again also on some other things that I just still didn't understand, like I don't know if the NEC. I'm still kind of confused on what that really stands for. So I kind of didn't even answer to those. So I still have question marks on those.
NEC is listed as not elsewhere classified.
And
so we have a prescriptive ordinance. Okay. And what that means is basically, if it doesn't say you can, then you can't. Sometimes uses aren't categorized anywhere. And so you need to sort of spoon them in with wherever the closest use would be. So let's say that we didn't have barber shop, but we had nail salon. Well, we'd say, well, they're both personal services, so we'll lump those together. But sometimes if there's a use that someone wants to do and it's not classified, they'll put it in there saying, well, not elsewhere classified. If it doesn't say you can do it somewhere else, then you can do it here. And what that does is maintain a little bit of order on the part of the administration of where we can place some uses, rather than not having a standard and placing them anywhere.
Okay, I understood now. So I just kind of highlighted those to a different kind of column. But what I agree on what Rebecca is saying, on where she's talked to some of the maybe residents and trying to maybe rent or buy. The things I see in downtown, there's really not much to really buy or even rent. I just think as a city, there needs to be maybe another retail shop so we can start making downtown look just and be a downtown. I mean, really, when I go downtown, all I see is a square. That's me. That's all I see. And the only time I go down to the square is when there's market days. That's a great event for families and kids to come. And I think that still needs to be a a go thing for our city. But other than that, I mean, there's just a lot of things that I think that we need to bring businesses in, maybe small business. But the thing is, like Rebecca and with residents, I've also talked to residents, and they know they're not going to go downtown just because they know Plum Creek is growing. So versus downtown to Plum Creek area, they're going to go ahead and side with the Plum Creek area. They're going to forget about downtown. Where I just think that, again, if we don't beautify downtown first, I just don't see anybody else coming downtown.
So on your part, there's a recognition that some of the uses downtown,
Like most of those orange ones right there, I highlight the orange. To me,
Yeah.
that's a no for me.
yeah,
I just
that's the kind of thing where they're I won't say it's exhaustive, because RS is the district that we allow just about everything.
Right.
But in CBD1 and CBD2, although it's comprehensive, there's a lot of uses that are allowable. Some
Right.
of them aren't necessarily what you would consider, ripe for window shopping,
Mhm.
and they're more akin to a destination. Sometimes the example that I like to use is down on Weldon Johnson. We've got the Amazing Ice sculpture. It's the business that makes, you can order up an ice sculpture and they'll deliver it to your event. Not really an impulse purchase. Not sure if that gentleman were located, on a storefront on Center Street and had a big window. It might be cool to watch them if they were in there actually sculpting the ice thing, and you could stand there for a while and watch. But I can't say necessarily how many purchases would happen because of that. So, there are just some uses where no matter what it is, you need it and you're going to go get it. Right.
Right.
A dentist office. If you've got a toothache, you're going to find that dentist office. It doesn't matter where they are. You're going to plug it into your phone and you're going to go find it and get there. But other things like we were talking about, that anything that has visual interest from the sidewalk, that may in fact be some type of an impulse purchase, or the types of things where you could, for lack of a better term, kill some time. Restaurants that have coffee shops and that sort of thing. If you're waiting for something to happen, or if you're waiting for someone's event to take place or to finish. So yeah, I can get it. If somebody had an auto sound system and radio sales and service, you would you really have a new stereo and speakers installed in your car just because you happen to find yourself downtown, or is that necessarily the ambiance we're looking for in our downtown? So, I've been thinking about this exercise the whole time from the standpoint of creating additional allowances, making more uses permissible downtown. I had never considered that this was something where we needed to streamline, because my preconceived notion is that the whole idea of revitalization is bringing more people.
Mm-hmm.
To bring in more people, we're going to have more shops, and potentially a more variety of shops downtown. And if we want more, then we need to make an allowance that allows for more. So the allowing for more shops creates more opportunities for shopkeepers to show up.
Right.
But maybe that's not right. The more I think about it, because allowing too many things down there, tax prep services, that's pretty busy from about February 1st till maybe middle of April. But then it probably starts to wean a little bit if it's not necessarily just corporate taxes versus personal taxes. So that's probably something that needs to be thought about.
When I did this exercise, I looked at it as what are the reasons I would go to a downtown area? Why do I want to go to a downtown area? What makes me get in the car and go to a specific city to visit their downtown? What do I want to look for? And then I looked at what we had listed for our downtown area, and things like the auto repair shop. I said, this is crazy. I would never go to a place like that. And then trying to also think, what would make someone get in their car and come to Kyle and want to wander our downtown. You know, what makes me go up to Wimberley? Well, they have a lot of little antique shops. They have a lot of storefronts with little glitzy, you know, doodad things in it. They have restaurants. It's a big area. There's places to park, as hard as it may be to find a place to park, but there's places to park there. You know, I can go there for a whole day, walk around, make some purchases. There's a little wine bar, plenty of restaurants. So that's the kind of things that I look for. There's also a theater there when I'm going to go to a downtown area. I don't see that here for us. It's not what's in that CBD1 and CBD2. It has some of those things, but not all of those things. And then I'm going to go back to what I said about us spinning our wheels. Unless we make it look good, unless we clean everything up and make it presentable, then no matter what we have in our uses, nobody's coming, even the citizens, as Priscilla, did you say people who go to Plum Creek? You know, they're going to go where they're going to go. They're going to go elsewhere.
Yeah.
They're not going to. And I don't know. For me, it's almost like we're putting the cart in front of the horse. I'll do what you ask me to do. I'll look at everything. I'll come up with suggestions, but I just feel like we're doing it kind of out of order. And me being very orderly, it makes me a little cuckoo. Now, we know I'm cuckoo to start with, so it could be ugly, but that's just how I feel about it. And that's how I looked at it. And I went through the list and just crossed off things that I thought, I didn't take it as far as Alex did, maybe I should have, and looked at, because some of the things he added, I liked. And thought, yeah, that's good. Yeah, that's good. The things he put in. I just went through it and said, no, 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 what's this? No, no, no. And tried to leave in the things that I thought people would, even if they lived there, would go. I mean, if you lived around the corner from a downtown area, hell, I'd be out there all the time eating and looking for little things. And, you know, that's cool. That's what you want to do. But then you come into the sidewalk thing and, you know, having bigger sidewalks. And it's, like I said, for me, it's putting the cart before the horse.
So you made two good points. The first one that I'm thinking about is the way that you think about Wimberley. I kind of think about Lockhart that way as well. Lockhart sort of has that same vibe, that same aesthetic, where they've got, I mean, obviously the barbecue. Although some of it's kind of far away to walk, but there's at least two good ones that you can walk and get to their downtown. And the other one I think about is certain parts in New Braunfels. New Braunfels has really expanded a lot, but if you can just stick to the blocks that are downtown nearest to where their traffic circles are and stuff like that, there's a lot of that as well. But you know, there's a real chicken and egg question there as far as the built environment and the sense of place you get from allowable building heights and the setbacks and the uses. And the second thing that you had mentioned was the competition for resources. From a business standpoint, we need to consider the districts that we may be creating between, you know, the four-way of 1626 and I-35. That's, you know, highway, commercial, and completely auto-oriented. However, there's a lot of things up there that people need all the time. There's clothes and there's food. You know, that HEB is never empty. And Uptown is going to have a different vibe to it. You know, more of the modern outdoor mall versus our downtown. They don't necessarily need to compete against themselves, though, if you can figure out a way that they can offer their own thing. A lot of cities are kind of utilizing the hub and spoke model for different districts where they would have maybe a theater and an arts district versus an office and a business district versus a you know, high activity center district, which would be like, you know, the grocery stores and whatnot. and it just depends on what flavor you want that night. If you want to catch a show, some sort of Shakespeare in the Park for a while, and then grab a couple drinks afterwards right near there, well then you know where to go to get that. You won't get that in another part of town, but you'll get something in another part of town that you might not necessarily get somewhere else. So it may be the point where we need to divide before we can conquer. There's a lot that goes into it, though. I mean, it's sort of hard to decide what is the priority. If every storefront on Center Street were filled with a different but similar use, and so we had a wide variety of what would attract folks, would they still come? What's going to bring them other than the what's contained in the buildings? I mean, is there parking? The sidewalk network that Paul had talked about, it's a little disconnected because we've got some older properties that might not necessarily have sidewalks or have what we would consider to be, compliant sidewalks. And then the last thing, and Will had mentioned this, and I want him to talk about it. And this is a little more specific than it is general, but as far as uses go, what is that noise? Is it me? Do I need to be muted? I hope not. The last thing that I would think about is the introduction of more residential, having folks downtown. Did any of you consider that in your review?
Yeah, so Howard, on at the very end of my thing I sent you is I do suggest that we allow multifamily in CBD1. I think having residential in our downtown is a positive. And but right now, if you actually go to the code, I don't remember the number, but one of the few differences between CBD1 and CBD2 is that multifamily is allowed in CBD2, but it is not allowed in CBD1.
Sounds like a radio. I like the idea of I'm a big fan of the mixed use. So I like that in a downtown with apartments like the Hayes Free Press building, the apartments on top of the stores and whatever. I do like that. I think that's for an urban downtown area. I think that's key. I think it's a really good look. Puts more people right there. I do like that in a downtown.
Rebecca's got her hand up, and then we'll get Brandon's initial thoughts.
Howard, you brought up like the difference between downtown and uptown, and would they compete against each other? Just in my vision of looking through what our assignment was for this week, I looked at downtown as more of the family atmosphere. So the restaurants, and then with doing market days and having Santa and the Easter Bunny and all that held at the park there on the square would bring more families downtown. So keeping the residential in there keeps downtown more family, and to where for uptown, where the bars could go to the uptown and make that, yeah, you have shopping during the day for the families, but then the younger crowd that wants to party, or even the older ones who want to party, can all stay uptown and stay at the bars and party uptown, and keep downtown as our more family friendly area of town, which I think that may help bring in more people from outside. It's like when Pie in the Sky is going on and people come into town to see what's going on. If we have the little shops downtown, I think people would stop and shop there. But then possibly eat lunch and dinner in any of the restaurants downtown. But then in the evening, they could go up to uptown and hang out at the bars and have their partying up there, and keep downtown as our friendly family area, just in my opinion.
And Rebecca, I think you're bringing up a good point. Programming of those public spaces is key. They do a good job with the marketplace, or the market day, excuse me. I think Howard touched on it, and also on the square, but other things.
Yeah.
there needs to be more.
Right.
And I don't know what that means. I don't know what type of events, but they need to be family friendly. There needs to be more.
Hmm.
Let's hear from Brandon.
Awesome. Hi, everybody. I have the ability to screen share, right? I did a presentation for this. Just so everyone knows.
I think you can. So if you go down to the bottom of your screen and you see the little green arrow in the middle that says share.
All right. Oh, no. Yep. Hold on for a second. Apparently, I have to open my security preferences. So if you want to continue having a conversation, you can come back to it in a minute.
Howard, do you want me to jump in a little bit?
Yeah,
then?
you can. Go ahead and talk about the notes you had put together.
Okay. So I did a couple things. One of them was for the CBD2 district. I didn't include it on the stuff for tonight, but is allowing potentially per building in CBD2 one ground floor multifamily unit at the back of the building. And the reason why I say that is because it goes kind of on a tangent a little bit, but if you have a ground floor residential unit in a vertical mixed use building, there is a good chance you don't have to have, and if it's ADA compliant, you do not have to have an elevator, which are extremely expensive. And putting a building on the small lots that we have downtown, and with the maximum height constraints they have, it's almost a non-starter to put an elevator in. So if you can have a ground floor residential unit that's ADA compliant, that actually allows, it should encourage developers to build the CBD2 buildings up to the maximum height, or help with that anyway, as long as they have residential on the second, third, and fourth floors, because you can get up to 45 feet in downtown by right. So, but we only see it with 2, because going above that starts messing with the building code. So if there's a way we can incorporate that in the zoning, that also might help smooth that out a little bit. And if you can add more units on the second, third, and fourth floors, that helps with a developer making a little bit more money on its return to help encourage and build the building, which is what we want to see. Not that money's everything, but it does help when it comes to getting development to happen. From a CBD1 standpoint, there's an aspect of it where it talks about, it's in, let me pull it up. Under permitted uses, it talks about residential uses excluding multifamily. So my idea was that, okay, we need to define what residential uses excluding multifamily actually is. From a gray area standpoint, right now, we're kind of okay with the idea of like a shopkeeper's residence behind a business in CBD1 or something to that effect, or maybe attached or in the back of the building. But if we wanted to really specify, like, okay, we're okay with a shopkeeper's residence, or for that shopkeeper, maybe their family are living behind the building, either above it, behind it, in the backyard, something like that, but where it's not necessarily multifamily, if you will, from a definition. So that can also help incrementally increase residential stuff downtown. Also be a bonus from a shop purpose, where they can live in the same site that they want to do business out of, but also should be in keeping architecturally and use-wise with the surrounding just straight residential uses that are usually adjacent to the CBD1 Central Business District. So those are a couple things that I was thinking of anyway.
I think I got it. Is that good? Is that good?
I can see it.
Cool.
I can see it, Brandon.
I can see it.
Cool.
Sorry, I was muted. I was talking, but I was muted.
All right, let me go to present real quick. Cool. Awesome. So I'm going to walk you through a little bit about how I did this and kind of what the results that came out of it. So I kind of took it as I thought that like I may have a little bit of bias in this because I'm like I have a little bit of history of working in some downtown stuff, so I wanted to take it from the perspective of the constituents that I have. So over the last couple weeks, I've connected 72 different small one-on-ones. My way of doing it was asking them first about zoning and then letting the conversation become more general about downtown over time. So trying to keep within the ask that council had for us. I found my average conversation about 22 minutes. I found that downtown and uptown came up a lot and kind of the differences between two of them. I tried to ask people in the square itself, so current users of our space, and the guy next to it looked about like me for an hour. I didn't find anyone using the downtown space at the time. So I assumed I knew nothing except the start of the council ask. I also tried to get a mix through my conversations of East and West Kyle, including apartment folks. I think you'll see some of the similar things come up between what we've already talked about from this. So essentially what they want out of this, what folks wanted. There we go. One, people are looking for, it seems like a third space. A lot of the things of the uses that people wanted in downtown came specifically around things like coffee houses, public spaces, very specifically kid-friendly spaces. I had a lot of people say that it was really important to be able to take their family to a space. They wanted more culturally specific spaces like art spaces, co-working spaces, food courts. I think it's pretty natural. People are looking for spaces to be coming out of a pandemic and be with others. And this just is a good reminder again, cities are made by the people. The second thing, people need to be given a reason to go downtown. I think we've talked about this a lot. Why would you go? And I've had many people stress to me that they have no idea why they would go downtown. And it seems like we need to have a tough conversation about why we haven't given people enough of a reason to go downtown and how we can in the future. That's not to say that like we've done a bad job. That's just to say that like this is a tough conversation we need to have. 3 is people want a space to work outside their home. I have a lot of people that I talk to who work in smaller spaces. I ended up talking to almost every single person in an apartment was like, I wish I had a space outside of my apartment to work. And I asked how many of them were small business owners or entrepreneurs, and quite a few of them actually were. We had some students as well mixed in with those. And they kind of highlighted a lack of space for small businesses to be. And not just like small businesses, but like at the smallest level, people with 1, 2, 3 employees max. Also people who were doing jobs where they were remote. That came up as well. It's really important that people don't have to go to Austin, San Antonio, or San Marcos to do this, especially if they live here in Kyle. Third, people want spaces that encourage connection. So again, comes back to that, talk about how there's a hunger for everyone to connect with everybody. Seems fairly understandable. And we get into what they don't want. The first thing they said, automotive sales and maintenance. We've talked a lot about the AutoZone. Every conversation I had a confusion about car dealerships, AutoZone, and why it is next to like the bar district and like what we would consider the bar district. I don't see it as that necessarily. And spaces that they would consider traditional downtown. They had genuine questions about it. 2, they very much said pawn jewelry, mattress. So basically lots of these like kind of big box style stories that aren't like boutique. Everybody identified these as spaces to avoid. I did specifically ask because jewelry was in one of them. I was like, what if it's like a local artist, things like that? They very much said they'd be interested in that kind of stuff. Like it goes back to not only window shopping, but like supporting local folks who are starting businesses as well and trying to keep their businesses here in Kyle. Third, manufacturing industrial uses. I didn't see this that much in CBD 1 or 2 anyway. But people seem to be really concerned about this. I'm not sure why this came up. I don't have enough history on this board or I think in the city to answer that question of why it came up. But this is something that people stress to me. And then 4 is closed off / exclusive spaces. People seem to dislike spaces where they weren't comfortable. fairly obvious. But spaces that are exclusive. So like professional uses being in a solo use space. So we talked about tax, accounting, lawyers. They really like the idea in a mixed use space or a multi-story space that may be single use, but not necessarily in a solo use like ground level sort of manner. They want to be able to interact with the space, and those didn't feel super interactive to them. Also, I'm sure we've all had the conversation about bars with people when we've talked with people. There's obviously a lot of opinions about that. I did say that no one could specifically name any of the bars downtown. So a lot of that, I think, maybe some confusion about like hearing it from others or just a genuine consensus about bars. So there's a little bit of that goes along with it as well. But many people did say there needs to be spaces for people to gather downtown. And then bars were in that conversation, but there's also just a lot of concerns with that. And 5, they gave a significant concern about removing people. I don't know if maybe the way the ask came out or something like that, people kind of expressed a concern that maybe like this removes people from the downtown community. I again was stressing like this is not our goal at all. This is we're talking essentially about uses of what's currently there. People did say that it's not that they want to remove people; they actually want to see more people downtown. Talking about mixed use. I asked the difference between like mixed use and multifamily for them. So like full single use residential blocks versus like blocks with like office retail on the bottom and then like mixed uses up top. People seem to really like that. And also maybe it seems like there might be a need for a discussion on raising the height limit at that point in time from 3 stories. If you're going to get into that kind of conversation, that just seems like a logical thing to be able to meet all the use needs. And then I had a lot of people talk about how in the downtown, they really wanted to see local businesses, local things. They wanted a sense of what Kyle was, who Kyle was, and the folks that are living, creating, and doing business here. And so I kind of want to go over, like to wrap this, notable individual uses that I heard. And the first one is a coffee house. Every person that I talked about how we really don't have a good coffee house. And I dug into a lot of this. So there's similar spaces, the kind of things that people had highlighted. We do have several coffee establishments here in Kyle, but it didn't seem to be about serving coffee necessarily. It seemed to be more of a forum space. So this goes back to that third space, people looking for places to work, to be. I actually had quite a few people mention bookstore to me, which is really weird. And I don't know if maybe I'm just very young and don't buy as many books as other folks. But this came up quite a bit, and in looking deeper into it, it doesn't seem that Hays County has an independent non-religious bookstore in the entire county, which is really interesting. And maybe I'm missing something from what I've seen, but I searched a very long time to find that, and I could not find one. And that is a good place for, I think, the city of Kyle to find a space that no other city in Hays County has. Next is co-working spaces. This came up quite a bit. Basically talking to students and folks. These are examples of co-working spaces and that could be kind of done with the infrastructure we have currently. That's why I kind of left one of these in the lower right corner, like house-looking things, because we have a lot of house-looking businesses in the downtown area. And so making sure that we're meeting all the needs of like not removing people, not removing things, to fit with the needs of what people are saying about downtown. The next is public space. Everyone I talked to said they had a need for more public space in downtown, that it felt like it wasn't, other than the park, it wasn't really accessible to just being a space for people to meet, to be a citizen of Kyle. And this is very interesting because a lot of public space, I was like, do you want more parks? That's kind of the question, because we had a park bond that came up last year. And a lot of it came down to parks are great, but we really want to have that interaction. And also, people hinted a lot they didn't really know much about the history of Kyle. And I will say that I don't think I'm the best oriented to the history of Kyle either. And so I think that one of the things I heard is using public spaces to tell some of that story of who Kyle is, what Kyle's become over time. And then the last thing was like novel spaces. So one of the things that in discussions with folks that I heard was not just going downtown initially, but why do I go downtown again and again and again and again? Like, why do I come back over time? And this is one of those things of like not just an initial use. So all these things you see here are spaces that are set up to be interchangeable into different things. So as you come down, whether it's for, it can be a farmer's market one day, it can be specific things. This is something that a discussion with, this is probably the longest part of the end part of the discussions with folks was like, why would I come back here? Why would I bring my friends here? Which are really important things I think that we need to ask if we're looking at downtown. Some themes that we heard, I think in this, tying it together, connecting. Downtown needs to be a place that interconnects people actively to each other in the play and to the place. Universal, downtown needs to be a place that people can access at the base level universally, even if some points of access like retail and offices have cost to access. Building, downtown needs to be a place where people build themselves in their future. They want a space that meets the need of social and work needs for themselves now and in the future. Engaging, downtown needs to be a place that draws people in and engages them, not the other way around. I think we've heard a lot about that from how downtown is designed from this committee so far today. We may also use the word welcoming in this. And then last, community. Downtown needs to be a place that exemplifies what we want in Kyle, what we want Kyle in today and in the future, and something to tell our friends and be proud of. Almost everybody mentioned that they want to be proud of the community they lived in here in Kyle. And then the last thing is I actually asked people, like, how do you think we should do this? Like, we were going about this, how would the best way, people really stressed interactivity. People stress that they want to be part of the process of this. And when digging deeper, I specifically asked people, like, would you give your time to make downtown a better place? Like, how would, if we had a space to where people could be involved to do this, would you do it? 25 people of the 72 that I volunteered said they would give their own time to something like a League of Creative Interventionists, which is like a society that does a lot of the things you see right here. And I'll close with these things that are examples of how you can do things beyond like charrettes to connect with folks. Ooh, that's loud. Better Block is an organization in Dallas. They do basically reimagining of spaces temporarily to prototype where if the things that we're hearing from people are what they want specifically and how they can see that in the future. And also on the bottom here, something that was mentioned to me in one of my interviews was this emotional infrastructure of places by Peter Kageyama, who is a public administrator, a thought leader in that. And then the last thing on the bottom is a walk up before I die created by Cindy Chang, which was built in New Orleans at the end of 2005 to talk about remaking New Orleans. Like, what do I want to do? What do I want to be here? And these are just some ways that we can kind of go about answering these questions. And these are things that I've got from people who I talked to. And it was really a great engaging process. And that is the end of my presentation. And I hope that adds to our conversation.
Very good, Brendan.
Something else. So before we go into that, I want to do one thing. Megan's not with us this evening, but she did send me her notes as well, that she would have presented herself this evening if she were here. So I'm going to share my screen and we can just kind of go over the email that she had sent. She had a couple of uses that she wanted removed, and she had a couple questions about what's allowable. I think she was on to the same idea that we've been repeating over and over again this evening. I'm not sure if we want to try and put a list together of what we want versus what we don't want in downtown, because it's so much easier to put together a category of what we want and a category of what we don't. hard part is it's really hard to administer categories. It's much more easy. It's much easier to administer a prescriptive ordinance rather than a conceptual one. But it seems like even looking, Megan had said, personal loan office, coin and gold dealers, bail bonds, and then a little bit of clarification on what some of these kiosk things were. What she's talking about, adding more residential types to allow for apartments, condos, mixed use in both 1 and 2, for more diverse and denser housing. All these are good points, and I think we've brought them up in one way or the other. There's a concept that I'm on, and I don't have any empirical data to back it up, but I want to introduce it and talk about it. The prime directive of a business versus the prime directive of a residence. I've touched on it a couple times that our downtown has probably more residential than I've seen in other similar downtowns. We have existing occupied residences on our main drag, Center Street. When I think about a business, the prime directive of the business is to bring as many people in as you can and move as much product as you can, right? I mean, that is termed, capitalism. That is success. Even if a person does come through your space and doesn't make a purchase, they may go out and talk to 2 or 3 people who might come back and do so. So it's all about the activity of getting as many people in. Now, activity brings its own secondary uses and externalities with it. When you talk about residential, it gets a much more nebulous. There are people who would never think of leaving a downtown of a city. They would never live someplace where they had to cut grass or they had a garage that they pulled into their driveway. They would never live that way. They want the activity. They want the ambiance. They want to be surrounded by what's going on. There are people who don't cook. There are people who just 3 meals a day happen outside of their 4 walls. And for that to happen, you can't live in an exurban subdivision that's miles away from everything. You need to be down in the area where you can get those services that you need on demand and preferably conveniently. So if we had a downtown that was a restaurant district, somebody who doesn't cook might really love to live within a block or 2 of that, because every time they were hungry, they could walk a block or 2 and get something to eat. Conversely, in residential, there are folks who want to live exactly the opposite way. Probably don't resent or really admonish business in the downtown if they live near the downtown. When it gets to be about 5:30, 6:30, depending on the time of year, they probably say, "Okay, let's wrap it up. Let's shut the lights off. Let's go ahead and let's get all those loud folks out of here because I want to start to wind down my evening, before we go to bed tonight." So the prime directive on the business side versus the prime expectation of the folks that live there might be incongruent. They might be the same. They might be in concert on the same wavelength. It just depends really so much on the variable of the residential that you have. When you build a residential space above, or in Will's example, behind a business, you know exactly what you're going to get when you move in, right? You know what you're above, you know what you're next to, you know what you're about by living there. We have a challenge here of, downtown and adaptively reusing our downtown. Even if we don't change a brick or a stick, if we just amend what is and is not allowable and where it is and is not allowable, we will have an appreciable effect on, that block one way or the other, either to increase or diversify, the activity level of that block. So, we do have a couple of automobile service type uses, and they're holdovers. They've been here for 20 years or more. Kyle was a very different place 20 or more years ago. 20 years from now, Kyle will be just as unrecognizable then to today's crowd as it was in 2001 to the folks that were there and looking at Kyle today. So, this is not open and shut. This is not easy. I am trying to coalesce this discussion into some type of deliverable that we can send up to the council. And being the type A type of guy I am, I'm trying to first work from, a syllabus or an outline with some general points, and then see if we can, fill in the gaps of those general points with details that pull the story together. So it wasn't really spelled out when this started, but the concept of a revitalization of our downtown by amending the uses in the downtown is built on the foundation of a premise that we all need to accept as granted. And the premise is that downtown is underperforming, or at least irregularly performing. So the question to that is, what does that mean? What is it that's wrong with downtown, and what is it that's missing with downtown that would fix that? And then hand in hand with that, because the charge of this group is to look at CBD 1 and 2 and the uses and how that affects Kyle's downtown revitalization. How are the uses contributing to what's wrong? We have heard from some, loud opponents will say that the bar scene on the far eastern edge of our downtown, because that's where all the bars are, loud, runs late into the night, not family friendly, not generally necessarily adding to Kyle's downtown ambiance in a way that we would necessarily advertise. But what flies in the face of that is Brandon had mentioned that, of the people he spoke with, 70 some people he spoke with, no one was able to identify the bars downtown. They have a sense of place that the downtown might not necessarily be a draw for them or their family, but they couldn't necessarily put their finger on the idea that it was the bars that was doing it, or that there's a reputation that, Austin 6th Street has a reputation, right? We know what 6th is all about. Did any of the people with whom Brandon spoke have that expectation of Center Street in Kyle, that it's Kyle's little 6th Street? Doesn't sound like it. Didn't sound like that's what most of the focus was, the onus of the conversation. So how are the uses contributing to what's wrong with Kyle's downtown? Will changing those uses fix it? That's a loaded question. It's a short question, but there's a lot of branches to that trunk. Will changing the allowable uses, not necessarily restricting them, not necessarily opening them up, but just changing them, however, will it fix what is perceived as the deficit of downtown? And then the conclusion to those three very broad topics would be, I think we're able to pinpoint what we want. We just can't necessarily identify what that is. I think we're looking for uses that draw people to browse downtown, that have a use that will get people to come and stay for some period of time, and that definitely gets the bodies together. Because Brandon had pointed out that the people will bring more people. So how do you get the first crop of people to show up and stay? So we're looking for more of that activity uses downtown, and less so of the destination uses. Like I had used the Ice Palace guy. If you need an ice sculpture, you will go find him. If you need an automobile, you will go find a dealership. But the types of uses that get people out of their cars and onto our sidewalks. What else?
I have a question.
Please.
The original directive from the city council was for us to look at CBD 1 and CBD 2, the uses of those two zoning districts, and tweak them to eliminate or add those uses in there that we thought would make downtown more walkable and appealable. I'm like thinking out loud. Am I getting that right? Like that's what they wanted us to do.
I believe pretty much. I mean, my
Okay.
expectation was the review, the revision of CBD1 and CBD2 in a way that fosters the revitalization of downtown, consistent with the plan that has been on our website for about a year and a half now.
Okay. And then after we come to a list of this is CBD1, this is CBD2, after we get that list, we're then supposed to have charrettes, because I did hear that word mentioned at the meeting, city council meeting, and bring the public in and ask them what their opinion of that is and if they want to add or subtract anything. Am I correct on that?
Sure. From a process standpoint, that's essentially correct. No matter what, if any changes were to be made to the zoning ordinance, that would be a text amendment, and text amendments would follow the public hearing process where it would go to the P&Z, there would be a public hearing, and then it would go to council. There would be another public hearing where they would actually make the decision. I think to make this a little more interactive than a typical P&Z voting meeting, we had broached the idea of perhaps making this more of an event and less of a procedure by inviting the public to come down and weigh in with their thoughts about what have they seen that works and what do they like and how much of that would they like to see in our downtown, and conversely, what are we trying to avoid? What pitfalls do we not want to, what path do we not want to go down? So I think a little bit of that conversation was talking about the idea of how much of this that we're doing tonight would evolve into a larger process or procedure, or like I said, charrette or project, or would it be simply limited to the 7 of you and staff's input, and then trying to put that together and offering that up to council to ask whether or not you're on the right path or not, and then continue on. I think procedurally, what we've done so far is right and proper and correct. We have looked at it. The outstanding question to me is, what do we do with it? And that's kind of where I'm going right now. I'm putting this outline together. What do you all think? What do you think of the review? You've talked about it yourselves. We've seen the product of at least 6 commissioners review. What is your expectation?
For me right now, my expectation is that staff will look at what each one of us sent in, what we said, things we wanted pulled, things we wanted added in, and come up with a rough draft of those uses for CBD1 and CBD2. Just flat, this is what we gave in. This is the choices that we had and what we gave in for our CBD1 and CBD2. And then at our next workshop, hack that around for what we all came to. See it for what it is. They add in the things that Alex added in, and the things that people pulled out, take them out. Come up with a tentative list, a start for what we already did.
So you and Priscilla, and to a lesser extent Alex, were fairly prescriptive in the actual table from 53-1230 as far as lining items out, or suggesting that they, wherein others were a little more conceptual as far as we know how we want the uses to perform. We don't necessarily know what they are specifically. So is there consensus among
Howard?
Yeah.
Can I talk through what I sent you?
Please, yeah.
I kind of did a brief overview earlier, but I really, I think I might conceptually disagree with some of the things said. And so I just want to kind of lay my case out there. And then the commissioners can agree or not from there.
We'll go here. All right, it should be up.
Okay, thank you.
Where do you want to start? At the top?
At the top, please.
Okay.
Okay, so just a couple of things to start with. I think when we are removing items, we are removing uses, we need to be very sure that's what we want to do. Because, like, I may not want a Sears downtown, But does that mean a mom and pop shop can't open that sells appliances? Will we remove appliances from the line? And so I think with each item we remove, we better be very sure of it. We may not think medical offices are a great fit, but I go to my dentist at least twice a year, if not more. And I usually do multiple things at once. I'll go to the library, I'll go to the dentist. And so if we really want to say you cannot open blank location downtown, we have to be very sure of that. Because I think it's that's a very big deal to start removing lines without adding more. But just, okay, so, and also what the council has asked us to do, from what I understand, is to revise CBD1 and CBD2 zoning codes. We've talked a lot about other issues downtown, beautification and more activities, and absolutely, these are all important things. I really want to do as best we can with what was asked of us from the council. And then I think if we do well on this, we show them the work we've put in, I believe they will ask us for assistance in other areas too. So I'm trying to keep it CBD1 and CBD2 as best I can here. But just from what I wrote, when I looked at CBD1 versus CBD2, we haven't really talked much about the difference between the two, except for housing. But the items that were available for CBD2 versus CBD1, can you just stay on the map, Howard?
Mhm.
Thank you. So the items that were allowable, many of the walkable items, uses were CBD2. Clothing stores, except for used clothing stores, were only CBD2. And so many of the bookstore, the hobby and game store, things that you necessarily didn't go downtown for, but as long as you're downtown, I'm going to go look and see what's there. Most of those are CBD2. And I looked at those uses, and then I sat and I looked at this map. And the disconnect I found between the two was that CBD2 is the square, which is what we want to focus. But besides the square, it's much more than that. It's very north to south. It very much follows the railroad track, follows Main Street, north to south. So when we have, besides our square, if a pedestrian in our downtown walks out of the square somewhere else downtown, where are we encouraging them to walk? It seems as if we're encouraging them to walk along the railroad track, because that's where our walkable businesses, as of right now, are zoned for. The majority of our main road in downtown Center Street is CBD1. That is the tax preparation, the tailor, the things that you would definitely go to maybe once or twice a year, but you're not going to go walk down and window shop. So what we're saying as of right now is that we want people to walk north to south along Main Street and the railroad tracks, and not east to west along Center Street. And that's just a disconnect in my mind. It seems like when someone drives through our city, and they're going to see the square, they're going to see the pie company, but they keep going down our main road, they're going to see that. They're not going to see most of Main Street and these other CBD2 areas. So I would assume what we want is our highest foot traffic things to be on the square, and from the square to be east and west through Center Street. What my first, so to fix this, I either had two main thing. Can you scroll down a bit now, Howard? Two main options here. Either to go ahead and rezone downtown, which actually probably would have been my first recommendation, but I also think it goes beyond what council's asked us to do. So the other option to kind of correct the disconnect is to allow most of our downtown uses in CBD1. I think we really have to have a vision as to why is an item only allowable in CBD2 and not in CBD1. And the reason I think it should be is because we have residences in CBD1, even along Center Street. And if there's a use we do not want next door to a residence, such as there were several, such as a bar, a theater. There were several that a bank you may not want exactly next door to a residence. Absolutely. But is there a reason you cannot have a bookstore down the majority of Center Street? I think most of the uses that are CBD2 only right now should be allowed in both CBD1 and CBD2. If we're going to go ahead and keep a few off because we want to keep them further away from residences, absolutely. But there should be a clear reason. As of right now, it's very strange. Like, you can have a fast food sandwich shop in CBD1, but to have a fast food taco shop, taco restaurant, it can only be CBD2. And I want to make sure that each line that we have that is CBD1 only, or CBD2 only, is there for a specific reason. And I think that's one place where we can make the biggest difference. Not necessarily adding or subtracting uses to our downtown, but allowing more in CBD1 than are right now. Can you scroll down a bit more, Howard? Thank you. Yeah, those were the uses right now that I would suggest to keep CBD2 only. Dance hall, pawn shop, bank, bingo hall, credit union, pool hall, movie theater, theater live, music group and artists, recording studios, radio stations, video arcade, gun shop, and yoga and dance studios. And so there definitely could be more you guys would think that would not be good in CBD1, but that's just a list that I came up with personally. I would suggest everything else that we're allowing in CBD2 also be allowed in CBD1. And can you keep scrolling? Okay. There were a few uses I thought should be removed from CBD1 and 2, bed and mattress sales, personal loan office, and bail bonds. But so there's only a few I'm saying we should completely remove. If there's more, absolutely. But I think we need to be really careful and really sure of anything we decide to remove. Next, there were some items I wanted to add. I think both CBD1 and CBD2 could use a bed and breakfast, pet grooming, and taxidermist. I was thinking of each one of those three, and I know taxidermist is very specific, but if I were a taxidermist and I wanted to open a shop in Kyle, downtown is exactly where I'd want to go. And a taxidermist is very much like Howard's example of the ice sculpture. Mm-hmm. And I do disagree with what Howard said about the ice sculpture, because yes, if a person was doing ice sculptures, having a downtown location may not get them a lot more business, but it will give our sense of our city something special. The fact that exists downtown Kyle when it doesn't in most places is something that would set Kyle apart.
If it's accessible.
I think just because I'm personally not going to go buy something there, I don't want to tell you can't open downtown. And 2, I don't want to stop you from helping to make our city the unique city it is. So I would suggest that we actually encourage those type of businesses. I don't want our entire downtown to be these one-off businesses that most people don't shop at, but to have some of them there, to allow them, I think would definitely add to making our downtown special. And then there were several uses that I thought would be good to add in CBD2 only, not in CBD1. The bar, it seemed like right now you could have a bar as long as it also had food. But I think to add a bar, add a brew pub, a mobile food vendors, a liquor store, a gym, and a tattoo parlor. These are all things that I think should be allowed in CBD2. And I know we've also talked about auto. I agree. I do not personally want to see auto dealers downtown. But when it comes to auto maintenance, I don't know if it's such a bad thing. This past Saturday, I had to get new brake pads on my vehicle. I was in San Marcos at the Goodyear downtown. I dropped my car off. They worked on my vehicle for 2 hours. I walked San Marcos downtown. And I understand not necessarily wanting it there, but I also, again, think if we do we really want to say you cannot have blank business here? And then the last thing I do have on here is that I do believe that we should allow multifamily in CBD1. I think multifamily will encourage more people to be downtown. Having more people live there will encourage more businesses as well. Okay, thank you all.
Hey, I like it. I like what you're saying about going through every item and not just crossing it off without a reason or not wanting it without a reason.
Right. Yeah, and I can definitely think of many items. The appliance store was a great example where most appliance stores I've been to, I don't want really that downtown.
Yeah.
But to say you can't have any appliance store downtown, even if you make it fit well for our residents, is going further than I'm willing to go. I think, you know, a mom and pop shop that you know that will deliver the appliance to you is something you can do. It's the same thing with carpeting store. Again,
Yeah.
you know, I'm not walking in there and walking out with a big roll of carpet. I'm walking in there, going to their showroom, then they're coming to my house. I think that's a perfect thing. I can go do that, then I can go to the pie. I can go get, you know, pie for lunch. So
then maybe along those lines, what we should do is look at each item and discuss. I mean, it's hard for us to do here on Zoom, but maybe that's what we need to do. Look at each one and say, do we, don't we? And if we don't, why don't we? And how can we maybe make it fit? How can we maybe make it doable?
I absolutely agree, and I know this will take time, and
Yep.
I'd much rather take a couple more months than we would have otherwise, and give the council the closest thing we can to what they asked for. They asked us to review these uses. We will give them our recommendation. We will give them the reason why it's our recommendation. And then I honestly think I want to give the council the best that we can, and then hopefully they will accept it or they will tweak it themselves. But just give them the best that we can as a commission.
I also like, I know I'm hogging the talk here, but I also like what you said about expanding some of the, sorry for the cat walking across, for expanding CBD2 into CBD1 with modifications, with not everything going in there, but pulling it through and still keeping it tempered for the residents who are there. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want us to have a reason. What is the reason why you can have a sandwich shop in CBD1, but you cannot have any other fast food?
Yeah.
And
no, you're right.
Just, you know, this is what we like in CBD2. This is what I like in both. And this is a reason why this is only CBD2.
Yeah, I like it. Anybody else? I'll shut up now.
I think that on principle, like, we definitely should have a reason for why CBD1 and why CBD2. I think it should go deeper than just like even Alex was talking about. I think that definitely when I look at the zoning map, like, I wonder how even CBD1 and CBD2 got there, because it still looks kind of messy when I see that, because a lot of those CBD2 are civic uses, like, already. And so the way I'm looking at it is like, I think we need to be careful about making things fit into that. I think it's important that we do have reasons that we say you can't be in these things, but I also think that, like, both planning and zoning has to go into this. Like, this is a great thing of, like, this is a zoning exercise, but we also should look at it from a planning perspective of, like, what do we want there? What are not what do we want there? What do the people that we serve want there? Like, I think it's really important that citizens have, if we're going to start going down this list, that citizens have a much deeper, like, conversation about this, because I don't really feel that comfortable going line by line in a committee of 7 in a city of 56,000 people. Like, we really need to get more information if we're going to start cutting line by line, because then we can have a specific reason and we can provide the best feedback to the council we can.
Well, I very much think that we do need public input. I would like to try to do this as best we can, but and then also get public input. I personally don't want to remove much. I would like to add things and go from there. But I think we should do this as best we can, then get public input and decide to either change it from there or present it to the council at that point as well.
Rebecca, did you want to say something?
No, not at the moment.
Okay.
I'm kind of taking something. Alex, you have some very, very good points, and I agree with a lot of things you say, but I also disagree with a lot of things you say. Like appliance stores in downtown Kyle. If you look at the history of Kyle and what Kyle is about, it's not suitable for downtown Kyle. One of the things that I look at is I come from an extremely small rural town. It's where I grew up. And I look at like what we had in our downtown, and knowing to get to the closest major city was at least an hour and a half drive. We didn't even have appliance stores in our downtowns, whether they were mom and pop or they were Sears. It wasn't there. It was always the small businesses, the restaurants, and they kept it so it was always a family thing. And I know from speaking with residents that have been in Kyle all of their lives, they like the idea of keeping downtown family and not trying to push it as the business. We have so many other places in Kyle where those businesses can go in. We have an entire medical plaza that there are many offices in there that aren't even leased. That's where doctors should be going. There's a lot of places like that where I think the doctors could go. And I know you said you got your car fixed in San Marcos and you got to walk around their square for 2 hours. Yes, I mean, San Marcos does have a lot of things on their square, but San Marcos also has, if you look at it, a lot of bars on their squares because they are catering to the college, because they are a college town. So when we're looking at how we want to incorporate our downtown, we need to look at what our city is, not just throwing businesses in there to get businesses in there necessarily. But I do agree, you have a lot of very strong points, and I do agree with the strong points also. And I would like to, go through all of those. I agree with going through them.
I forgot to say that I would like to bring in is that when you do look at this list and decide what you want to take in, what you want to take out, I would suggest having the map there as well, because when you look at CBD2, it is the square, but it's a lot more than just the square. It is 2 blocks north of the square, 2 blocks south of the square. And so to say you can't have blank store in any one of that area, I may not want it on the square directly, but in that map, there's probably a place to put it. And so an idea, I don't even know if this is actually a thing we could do, but we could always suggest a third zoning for CBD3, or if we wanted to make it more specific, because just to say, I don't want this in the square, so therefore it cannot be downtown is a big thing, because the way the zoning map is now, I think there are a lot of places on CBD2 furthest north, furthest south, that some of these places might be good for, that may not be good for downtown.
Anyone else?
I don't know if we should go as far as going to like CBD3 though. Like, I mean, I have to admit, like I think it's probably more important that we simplify versus make it more complicated.
Right.
Like just to make sure that like one, I in all of my conversations, no one's had like when I went down the list, because that's where I started. I was like, I'm just gonna go down the list. We're gonna do this. People are probably gonna have an idea of some of this. And until I named something they'd already seen, they had no idea. And that's kind of the problem of it, right? Like if we don't simplify it and make it easy for folks to access, especially again, we'll go back to wanting small businesses and things in the area, in our our local Main Street, how are we making sure that we are communicating our zoning code to them effectively to make sure that they know how to place their like business in an appropriate area?
Anyone else?
Michelle, when everybody's done, I'd like to just say a few comments.
Okay.
I
Howard,
just have one more question. Did any of you find any uses that you thought might conflict with one another? Or you have two uses that are allowable in the same district, but probably shouldn't be allowable in the same district?
I have a question. And this is something that Megan had in her email, and I also had highlighted, which I didn't understand, were the kiosks. I mean, where would you even put a kiosk? Are you talking about having a business and a kiosk inside? Or are you talking about a kiosk outside? What exactly? I mean, because there's a lot of kiosks on, I guess, in these business. I just don't even understand who would bring a kiosk, especially here to Kyle. I don't understand what that is. I know what a kiosk is.
right.
To come
Well,
to Kyle,
that could be kind of a conflict. Why would you have a kiosk when you have standalone building right there? I don't know.
I mean, say we bring a Sprint, say a T-Mobile downtown, which would be good. That would be great. But I know they also have kiosks, T-Mobile kiosks in malls. Are you just going to bring a kiosk outside? I mean, where would
Well,
you?
don't they call them pop-ups now? If they have stores like that, they just pop
I
up.
don't understand why we have these. Nobody knows.
Nobody else has any.
I don't have an answer for that either. I
Howard's
don't
just
know
shaking his head.
where the table came from in the first place,
Right.
let alone why it was tailored for Kyle's downtown. So
I do know that the zoning happened in 2003. I did find that out in my digging, that's when they made the changes.
And I just want to say, Alex, you bring up a lot of great ideas, and I love that. But I also do disagree on a lot of little things about, like, I understand we have a automobile maintenance coming into Kyle, right? Coming in downtown to our left if you're coming in to the west side. And that's great. I don't have a problem with that. The problem I have is next door to that, where you have a tire company. I guess that's a place where you can come get your tires. I'm not for sure what that place really is. Maybe I need to stop by there and really ask. But to have all these tires laying around all over the place, inside, sideways, back, front, that just, again, it's just plain ugly coming into Kyle. I don't know if we really need to be rezoning places. I mean, maybe we do. But again, that's another thing that maybe we need to talk about, that, again, automobiles, maintenance / tire shops do not need to be downtown.
Anyone else?
And I just have to say that I honestly, I think we should go line by line. And absolutely, if the commission doesn't like appliance stores, absolutely, to take it out. I'm going to advocate. I'm just saying, I'm going to personally advocate to leave the most amount of things in that I think I can, just to allow the most kind of businesses to come to our downtown. But that's just me personally advocating for it. I absolutely, will agree with the commission if we all as a group decide to cut certain lines. I'm just going to play devil's advocate probably more often than not and think there's probably a way that this use could work. But yes, no, absolutely. I think we should go line by line, decide what we want to present to the council or not. And then whatever the commission decides, we'll absolutely go from there.
Great. Okay, Councilmember Rizzo.
Thank you. First of all, I just want to thank you all for doing your due diligence and going through the task at hand. It's actually really refreshing to see all your input. one of the things I would like to point out is that we are reinvesting in our downtown. I hope you're familiar with our new beautification plan to the historic downtown square. It's a multi-million dollar plan that we're putting in to promote more family, more area. So when you're looking at your rezoning, always remember that we are investing into our square. We're going to promote a place that can bring the families out. 104 Burleson is another project that we're bringing in that has mixed use as well, and that's something that we're really looking for. And I think as a city would really benefit us, the mixed use multifamily. I think we've got a lot of it. One thing that we do want to promote is shopping and having more people visit the downtown. I'd be very careful when you're looking at bars. Uh, just remember, we have a lot of homes in downtown still, historic downtown. You would have to ask yourselves, what do I want next to me if I live there? So always remember that when you're looking at that, because there are people that live there. I know that the people I've talked to there are not against businesses coming in, and if it's businesses that promote family, promote business, but just be careful where you go with that, and especially remember that we're investing in our historic downtown square to promote that family atmosphere. So what would contribute to that when you're looking at your agenda items and your recommendations as well? So, but then again, I just want to say thank you for all your help and for really looking at this and being willing to put the time into it as well. So with that just being said, I just want to thank you all for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, Mr. Coons, what's the deal?
Well, it seems the consensus is that you guys want to go through 53, 12, 30, and at least the CBD1 and the CBD2 lines, and decide what's there and needs to either be removed or rearranged, and then perhaps go through a little bit further and find other uses that are not currently allowed in either district and add some of those in. So I'd like to know what does that look like? It's 8 p.m. now. Do you want to start that process now? Would you rather have another meeting where you did that? Would you want to do this at the next meeting? So just not trying to get ahead of myself, but from a scheduling standpoint, today is the 9th. The meeting in 2 weeks on the 23rd is a regular voting meeting. We can also bring up this issue again later on in that meeting on that same agenda, so 2 weeks from tonight. Or the next work session will go back to the normal schedule, so it'll be not until April the 27th. So that's a solid 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's 7 weeks from now is the next work session. So how much time do you want to carve out? Do you want to start tonight? Would you rather do it at the end of the voting meeting in 2 weeks? Just what's your pleasure?
Alex, why don't you chime in here?
Okay, so I know that I kind of gave some concepts tonight that, may not have been on people's radar. And I really would like people to think it through a bit. So I would like to push it off to another meeting. I think, and I would actually encourage you, go to downtowns, go to a downtown somewhere and see what you think works and doesn't. But I think, based on the discussion we've had, even from the other commissioners, I would really like to kind of digest it a bit. We have some good overarching concepts given, but to actually go line by line, I think we should either do it. It's up to you all. The end of the next meeting, or I'm fine doing it the next workshop meeting. I don't think there's a huge rush to get this done for the council. I'd rather do it well than do it soon. So I'm perfectly fine doing it the next workshop as well.
I'm going to agree with Alex for the next workshop. I think it would be good to start it then, just to get it off the ground, and we could figure out where we're going from there. And it's right. I think it's a good idea for us to think about it, to look at everything, mull everything over that we've discussed, and we can come back with fresh heads and look at it, fresh eyes, and look at it differently.
I agree.
Priscilla?
I'm good with that.
Brandon?
Absolutely. I need time to talk to constituents before I do this.
Okay. So we'll do it next meeting, Mr. Coons.
There's a train going by outside, so I was muted. So you want to pick it up at the next work session meeting, which will be Tuesday, April the 27th.
Okay,
Okay.
okay. What did I want to say? Oh, do you have anything else?
Oh, ma'am, this was the sole item of business for tonight, my understanding.
My heart be still. Item number 5 is adjournment. Can I have a motion?
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries. We're done. Thank you so much, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Thank y'all.
Soon.